I'm Mary Rick, a UC Master Gardener of Santa Clara County. We're going to be speaking about changing our gardening and changing the climate and an overview of ways to respond. Our Bay Area local climate is changing. Join us to find out how we can keep gardening and how we can be part of the solutions to climate change. Mary's been with UC Master Gardener since
That's 3 years ago, but
Yeah.
talking about 2 decades ago when I started. My
I
garden
started gardening, excuse me, okay. Started gardening almost 2 decades ago. Journey growing on herbs in her backyard. She's since developed a passion for gardening California native plants, edible plants, and pollinators. She's also interested in learning about garden practices that help us mitigate climate change. So welcome. Thank you.
I just want to mention there's a QR code on the title slide in case you want a copy of the slide. You can just scan that code and you can download your own copy. There's also a handout with some additional resources. So just a quick word about Master Gardener Program. We are part of the University of California, and Master Gardener is basically a trained volunteer acting as an agent of the University of California. And our mission is to extend research-based information on home horticulture, pest management, sustainable landscape practices to Californians. And doing public education talk like tonight is one way we extend our public mission. One thing I forgot to mention is basically all of the Master Gardener program operated at a local level. So there are 9 counties in the Bay Area, and there are 8 Master Gardener program operating to serve the local residents in the county. The exception is San Francisco and San Mateo program, so obviously serve both counties. And because I am a Master Gardener at Santa Clara County, some of the slides here will have a bit of a Santa Clara County focus, including this one. These are the way that we serve the residents in Santa Clara County. If you don't mind, I do have kind of a sign-in sheet. If you want to help us, we want to better understand and measure the impact that our program have in our local county. While personal stories are powerful, contributing to this evaluation surveys help us show effectiveness. So if you decided to help us, add your email address and name, and in about 90 days, you'll receive a survey asking, basically, after this talk, if you have decided to change the way you garden because of what you learned tonight. If you didn't, that's fine too. We just want to gather data so that we know how we're doing in our job. So these are really the goals for the night. And I just want to say there are a lot of ongoing scientific research on climate change, its effect on human and on natural and built environment. In new ways, constantly, the new way to mitigate and adapt to climate change continue to be developed, tested, and studied. And so in this talk, we'll cover some of the ways that we as gardener can have the power and potential to become more resilient to the effect of climate change, as well as being part of the solution also. Some of the practices are common sense. Some are rooted in the principle of sustainable landscape practices, things that good gardener will do anyway. And then they are informed by research. And that means as new research come along, we're going to update the information also. We are all student learning together on how we can continue to keep gardening and continue to be more successful as a gardener in our changing climate. Okay, just a quick recap. Climate change, it's really about long-term changes in global pattern of temperature, precipitation, rain, wind patterns. And the graph here you can see, it shows that the global average temperature for land as well as ocean compared to the long-term historical averages, generally, we're talking about 3 decades. And you can see the anomaly going up in the last 50 years, pretty quickly for land-based temperature. A little slower for ocean, but still going up. And a quick recap just on what are greenhouse gases. Almost 80% are carbon dioxide. And then another 11% are methanes, and then the rest are nitrous oxide and fluorinated gases. And some of the fluorinated gases, although they are very small in concentration, they have a huge potential for heat trapping. And many of these gases come from agricultural manufacturing processes, and carbon dioxide, as you know, come from burning of fossil gas also. Anyway, this is just a quick recap. This is just a snapshot of the average temperature anomaly in the last 3 months compared to the long-term historical temperature. And you can see that the global temperature increase is not uniform across the world, not even uniform across the country. So where we live, we're going to see different patterns or different signs of climate change. And in fact, California, this California fourth climate change assessment that came out a few years ago, focusing on different region of the state, and this one focused specifically on the San Francisco Bay Area. These are some of the signs of changing climate in the Bay Area in the last few decades. I'm curious, do you notice some of these changes? Yeah. And the ones in red, they all have an impact on us as gardeners. Okay. This is the section where I mentioned that it will be a little bit more Santa Clara focused, but the effects still concern many parts of the Bay Area. So I'm going to be focused on 3 main areas of climate change effect that we're seeing in the Bay Area. First one is extreme heat. One way to define extreme heat is summertime temperature that are much hotter over a longer stretch of time, or more humid than average at a given location. I think when we were having a walk earlier in the garden, we were talking about, we're noticing more humidity in the last couple of years. So this is one sign of extreme heat. So these are some of the signs of effects of extreme heat on plants and on our landscape. So I'm not going to read them. But I will just highlight a few things. Down in Santa Clara County, where I live, it's a little warmer, so many of us like to grow tomatoes. This is one of the signs that we see a lot, where tomato plants leaves curling upward. It's one sign of heat stress and water stress. Another way is sunburn or embolism or cavitation.
What do you call cavitation?
Good question. So when it is dry, plants work harder to pull up water through its xylem, and the stress of it causes the break in the hydraulic. Kind of like think of the plant as like a plumbing system, right? It breaks the water column, and in that process, air bubbles come in, and the air bubble kind of formed an embolism, blocking the transport of water between the root and the leaves. So basically where it breaks, the rest of the plant, that part of the plant die. And sometimes you might see that like in the Sierra, if I've seen it going through a national park where section of the tree just turned brown. That's actually a sign of embolism. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. Another sign of climate change, because of temperature changes is, we are seeing decreasing winter chill hours. This affects fruit growers. Where I come from in the Santa Clara County, the Valley of Heart's Delight, we are seeing signs where stone fruits don't grow as well. And here, this is a graphic. It's a little odd. It's basically, we have to rotate the state of California 90-degree and unfit it, but you can tell the cumulative chill hour has been decreasing since mid 1950s. And that trend is projected to increase. This has an implication on our our fruit agriculture. Crops like stone fruits like cherry, pears, and some of the nuts are just not going to be doing as well. And because of that, there's a lot of research looking at what type of other fruit variety we should shift into. Citrus is one, or there's some also low chill variety that we're looking at. On the flip side, we are seeing what's called degree days increasing. That's the measure of cumulative heat needed for crop pests to basically move through its generation. So what that means is some of the pests, insects we are seeing, aphids, one example, right? It's going to go through more generation in a year. A little scary, to be honest. And also the heat ranges is expanding, moving into different areas. So that also means that some of the pests that we are not used to seeing in one area may start seeing more. So those are the kind of things that we want to keep an eye out on. And other effect of climate change that we're keeping an eye on and want to do something about is wildfire. We kind of talked about over dinner and our walk also. We are seeing longer and earlier fire season. Some would even say basically it's year long now, sadly. And we're also seeing that when we get a lot of rain, we get a lot of grass, that unfortunately turned into fuel the next year when we have a dry weather to power through more wildfire. So that it's something we're worried about, not only for some of the reason we identify here, but the biggest reason when it comes to climate change is now the wildfire is turning carbon sink in forest or grassland into carbon source, meaning when they burn, it's releasing more carbon. And we're losing capacity to store some of the carbon also. So because of that, there's a huge effort statewide. And I think some of you mentioned reading in the paper in Chronicle, and down in my county, the San Jose Mercury also talked about wildfire, on what that means, some of the ways that we can plan for those situations. And we'll talk a little bit more about it as well. And with wildfire, it does mean that sometimes we see ashes. And Pepper, we were talking a little bit about how that could change water pH. That is a potential. The ash also could end up, if it's near a fire site, could coat the leaves and interfering with some of the plant processes. Good news is it's actually pretty easy to take care of that, just holds off the plant. And research, hopefully, on a hopeful note, found that the particles don't seem to be imposing too much risk in the soil. The dangerous part is more when it affects the drinking water sources, when the fire particle ended up contaminating drinking water sources, which we have seen with the Paradise Fire, as well as down in Palisade, where after fire they had many of the residents received drinking boil water notices. So we, again, because of the risk it imposed, we really want to focus on prevention. On the flip side, some research actually shows that there are indication of the particle in the air during fire cause water to diffuse. And in some cases, actually help plant productivity. But you have to balance that with like pollutants also. Another major risk that we're worried about is flooding. And we saw that on the East Coast with Charlotte, North Carolina, right? Where we were seeing frequent flooding of what people call 100-year flood, of even 500-year flood. What that, by the way, what that really means is, this means a chance, like 100-year flood is 1% in a given year. It doesn't mean like it happens only once every 100 years. So our concern is a lot of time with the flooding, even though you can, like, this is a map of Santa Clara County, where it doesn't seem to affect a lot of area according to the map, but there's a lot of population along the creeks and river. And like the current 1-year, 100-year flood area, the dark blue, that accounts for about 10% of the population in Santa Clara County. The light blue, 50% of the county. That's a lot. In terms of impact on gardener, a couple of things that we worry about. One is if our garden actually gets flooded, a lot of times floods water carry contaminants, heavy metals, chemicals. If you're growing edible plants, we advise people to basically any produce and plants that come that got contaminated, double back them, throw them out, don't eat them. And wait about, think about 60 to 90 days before trying to grow and harvest, because we want the soil have an opportunity to recover. And also study shows that adding compost and fertilizer into the soil, flooded soil help the soil to recover also faster. And other things that we're worried about with flooding is soil can get waterlogged. And for trees, especially combined with high winds, which we do get with our winter storm, exposed trees are not very healthy because of droughts or drought condition. They are more likely to be damaged and sometimes even uprooted. And that has implication even just more than being your garden. I mean, sometimes broken branches fall on power lines and we ended up with power outage. So the lessons here is keep your tree healthy. I'm going to run through some of these because some of them are actually common sense. So we do have limited time. First thing you do when we're going through a heat wave, protect yourself first. And what I want to mention here is the signs of, because the first three are pretty self-explanatory, but the signs of heat illness that I want you to be aware of are like body overheating, skin bumps, muscle spasm, getting a little headache, dizziness or nauseous. Hopefully you don't get to that point because you're drinking water and, getting covered and hydrated. But if you get to that point, please take a break immediately. Go drink some water and cool off. Get into shade. These are some additional strategy to help your garden, your plants survive in a heat wave. Watering in the morning helps because it gives plants the time to absorb the water so that it's better able to withstand the heat later during the day. You probably know watering trees deeply and less frequently help train the plants, the roots to go deeper into the soil. And so it helped them to better withstand elements. Mulching is also important because it helps keep the soil cool and protect them from the elements as well. Try not to fertilize plants during hot summer periods also, because that encourage plants to leaf out, which put even more stress on the plants.
Can you explain number 6?
Sure. Radiant heat. Usually it's more like a long path if you have like light where with some of the, especially if it's like along concrete or something like that, where the heat absorb and reflect back to the plant.
Reflective.
Yeah, reflective. Thank you. So in those cases, basically what you want to do is check on the plants, make sure they have enough water. These are some more longer term strategy to adapt your garden to a changing climate. We know that over long term, we can anticipate more intense rainfall in the summer with like atmospheric river, and also just more longer and more intense period of droughts also. And anticipating that, some of the things we can do is incorporate rain garden, bioswale, basic permeable grounds that allow a lot of water that comes down quickly to get absorbed into the soil instead of being diverted to, instead of going straight into the storm drain. That does two things, right? Rainwater that go into storm drains, we don't recover them, right? Versus water that percolate into groundwater, recharge groundwater. And it also helps plants better weather drought period when it receives more water. The other strategy is start looking at plants that will better withstand heat and drought. You know, we all have our favorite plants. Some do better than other. Some needs less, some needs more babying, some less, right? And California native is one that many people tout, and it makes sense because, you know, those plants are adapted to the Mediterranean climate here. But there are other ones, like, you know, the plants from Australia, South Africa. Many of those plants also tend to do well in Mediterranean climate. If you are growing edible plants, consider variety that allow you to get your produce more quickly, meaning earlier harvest, with so that it needs less water, less fertilizing also. And the other thing is check the current plant hardiness zone map. There was a new one that came out a couple of years ago, the 2023 one. In that latest revision, most of the US experienced a quarter increase of climate zone. There are a few that actually got cooler, but very minority of them. On the whole, we are seeing increase of hardiness zone. These are some resources to help you find the right plants. Calscape is a database for California native plants, but the UC Davis Arboretum All-Star, have any of you heard of it? Ah, awesome. Well, there's something I want to tell you about it. So last week they announced that they have made some changes, I think, to the lineup. It used to be only about 100 plants. In the last couple years, so they start UC Davis Arboretum start introducing what they call future favorite, basically plants that are more climate ready. And now they've incorporated into the all-star lineup. Now it has 130 plants. They have swapped out some, they retire some and then added more. Number of them are native, but many of them are not. So it's folks who are not 100% bought into natives still have choices. The other thing you want to consider is what's called climate ready trees. Trees have a longer horizon, right? It's much harder to make changes now. So I guess it's much harder to, if you grow a certain plant right now, it may not in 30, 45 year may not be able to withstand the climate down the road, because it may look different. So here's one resource that was kind of neat that a UC advisor told me about. And if you get the slides, you can click on that link. It's a little online app, a city app created by University of Maryland Center of Environmental Science. It allows you to kind of find what they call a climate analog, where San Francisco, for example, in 60 years, its climate could likely look like Jamal, California. I never heard of it, but basically it looks like at the border of California and Mexico.
There was a saying years ago, 400 miles north.
Mhm.
So wherever if you want to see what you're gonna be like in 10 or 15 years, look at 400 miles south of you.
Mhm.
That, so like Sandra, you're saying.
Yeah, basically, yeah. This just makes it a little easier for
Yeah.
you to find an analog. Like where I live, the analog will be like Redlands, California.
Right.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. So, related to that too, and also start looking for a local fruit tree if you want to grow fruit tree, continue to grow fruit tree. But something I want to mention is that UC Davis and US Forest Services have they started a 20-year study that started in 2015 looking at what they call climate ready tree. So they're basically doing an experiment 10 years in now, testing different variety at 3 sites in Sacramento and coastal Southern California and inland Southern California, also testing how some of those trees could do in those climates and hoping to give us some data to help us find a new palette of trees that could better withstand and thrive in the climate that we are likely going to see 60, 50 years from now. So again, in the slides, there's a link to the climate ready tree study that you can click on, check it out, and follow. This is the one that is really important. It's also a little controversial for some people. Like I talked about earlier, this is an area where it has a tremendous impact on climate change, because when there are a lot of wildfire and we are going to be less capable to withstand and to make progress basically in adapting to climate change. And there was an article in San Jose Mercury about a week and a half ago that report on some major study that was done, and actually done in part with UC, that looked at the major wildfires in the last decade, like the Tubbs, Paradise. And you may also just start hearing the term in the last year or so, where now we're not just talking about wildfire in the wildland area or what people call WUI, the wildland urban interface. We're starting to see or hear terms like urban firestorm or urban wildfire. And what happened is that we are learning how fire is spreading with some of the weather changes that's happening. I think we were talking, I think we were after dinner, we ran into a friend of yours. She was talking about, I'm noticing more wind, stronger winds, right? That is a sign of climate change. We are seeing more intense Diablo wind or Santa Ana wind. And wildfire is no longer about a war, what many people think of a war of a big wall of fire coming from the forest into the WUI area. It's really about 3 ways fire are moving, and I'm gonna talk about the first two. One is pathway fuel by combustible material, plants, fans, wooden fans, also that basically could lead from forest. If there's a fence here, the fence can catch fire from, burning plants here. And if the yard is not clear, like that illustration, it doesn't take long for fire to move from less urban area to a house. And once it gets to an urban area, it's really easy to just skip house to house because of how tight our houses are. So some of the advices we're getting is home hardening. One big thing everyone can consider doing, if they have wooden gates that connect the fence to the house, consider swapping a metal fence, because that helps break the fire fuel path, right? And then the other way fires have been spreading is by ember, especially with the intense wind. Studies have found that ember can travel about a mile away, which is really far. Yeah, and even farther. And some of the tips on home hardening are like, the screen on the vent get vent with smaller opening.
Yeah.
Because that helps keep the ember from blowing inside the house and start burning from inside. That's something actually my husband just did a month ago also, because after I showed him all the study, he was like, you should do that. Some of the other tips, and probably take a longer planning range, metal roof helps because it's more resistant. It's not foolproof, but it's more resistant. And then a second action that everyone can consider taking is clearing what's called zone 0, which is the first 5 feet of perimeter around the house. So look for anything that's flammable, wood. A lot of us like to pile, me guilty, pile like scraps right next to the house, trash cans right next to the house. Some of us also like to plant right next to the house, because that's been the idea of beautiful garden or yard that we've grown up with. We need to start flipping that around and consider a different way of landscaping. So one tip that we talked about, I went into a fire ecology training a couple of weeks ago, swapping the path that we normally have. A lot of times we have like, I don't know, arborvitae right next to the wall, right? Clear that area and put the plants here instead, and put the pathway right next to the home so that you have a clear 5-foot pathway. Find places for those trash cans also. Yes.
If you look at YouTube, any of the studies, some are being started now with hydrating plants near the house so they don't burn. And if they're hydrated, they don't burn.
So what we've learned, what we're told, is all plants do burn eventually. There's no fire resistant plants, no matter how people market it. So some might be a little bit more resistant, like succulent, but eventually they do burn. So it's a trade-off. If we want to be serious of reducing chances of home catching fire, because we may not always be home when a fire comes. We might not be there to host and help put out the fire or defend out fire. So home hardening and clearing that space give us a better chance of keeping our home intact. And I think after the Palisade fire, for example, the few houses or Eden fire that survive are houses that don't have a lot around them. They're very clean line of roof and wall also, because there's less chance for ember getting caught and start burning. Like I said, it's a little controversial because a lot of us are used to a certain standard or idea of gardening beauty and design. It takes a mind shift, and it is one that, I'm personally going through right now also. But there are also some immediate things you can do also, like, in the first picture where clear some of the lower branches helps because and opening up the space because that make it less likely for those plants catching the embers and fire. Another tip that we got was fire, they said garden in what they call disconnected islands and away from home so that or we are not creating path of fire to our house if we try to interrupt groups of plants. So, and this is an area where a lot of research continue to be going on right now. I would say keep your eyes out for in the news. And we've been Master Gardener are being tapped to reach out and talk to people also about this because this is serious. The state is very concerned and insurer too. Change topic real quick. Invasive species. I think we are all gardeners. Monitoring the plants, health of your plants, help keep an eye. And as soon as you see signs of pests, address them. There are lots of resources you can check. Like UC has a whole website on integrated pest management where you can look for tips and guidelines on how to combat those. And in some cases, some of the pests will cause some really serious economic impact on our state. Prevention is always better than trying to clean up once something has get established. I mean, in our case, Santa Clara County, I don't know if you guys are affected. We are currently a big part of San Jose under quarantine for med fly and drop fly. We are basically anticipating that we'll see that more often because of climate change. On the flip side, biodiversity really do help, as you know, if we can eliminate invasive species and put in plants that support native pollinators and beneficial insects. It prevents those invasive species get a foothold. I think Pepper mentioned there are actually over 1,600 species of native bees.
Oh, 16.
Yeah. So that's just bees. And then there are lots of other beneficial insects. And the other nice thing about beneficial insect is it helps to reduce use of pesticides. It is something that I have grown to embrace myself in my own garden, where I'm growing more herbs in the perimeter that attract certain beneficial insect. And they work, they really do. Like I keep, for example, phenols blooming. That attracts a lot of green lace flies, green wing. Thank you. It's getting late for me. Wasps also. And I'm seeing a lot less aphids. I'm also seeing a lot more signs of aphid mummies, which means that, so aphid mummies, do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, so wasps, they're tiny wasps that can attack and deposit eggs into aphids, and they basically hatch inside the aphids, develop inside the aphids, and when they become adult, they eat their way out. But guess what? That kills a lot of aphids.
Oh.
Oh, they're tiny. They're like this big.
Oh.
They're this big. That's just one example. And like ladybugs also, they eat the aphids and other pests also. And I've really grown to love those insects before I just like, oh, no. And now I realize what that means. It makes my garden a lot more alive. And I don't have to worry about finding pesticide. At least that's my personal preference. So, another way biodiversity makes sense is that it's more resilient when there is a condition or pest that goes through the area, you are less likely to lose everything as opposed to monoculture. A key to climate resilience is incorporating more plants into our built environment. Plants do reduce greenhouse gas emission. And we are seeing more and more of that. Like Charlotte was sharing with me over dinner that Salesforce Park, it's a great example of urban greening.
Yeah.
And we want to see more of that. I know it's time, so I'm gonna go through those really quick because these are really just principle of sustainable landscaping practices. Healthy soil will help in many ways. And one way is that, these are all the things that we know and how it supports the ecosystem. But one thing you may not know is soil is a major way to sequester carbon. Soil sequester more carbon than the atmosphere itself. It's more than combination of many of our landscape, forest, and ground. So soil that is alive has a lot of microorganisms also that help sequester the carbon. So keeping soil healthy will help a lot. One thing I want to mention is mulching helps a lot too, because there have been some studies, not uniform, but some study that have shown warmer weather seem to speed up release of soil carbon into the atmosphere. So ways that we can help keep the soil cool, undisturbed, helps slow that down. Minimizing soil tilling is another one, because tilling soil break up the soil structure, which again hurts its ability to sequester carbon and support the food web. If you can, it's nice to grow food close to home. I know not everyone can, right? But something to consider is when you grow your own food, you're basically negating transport of the produce, all the commercial packing, all the plastic wrapping that's created by, guess what? Petroleum product. And that manufacturing process release carbon, right? Some of the agricultural chemical also are created with petroleum product also. So if we can grow our food, even to some degree, it helps. If we can practice sustainable gardening methods, that also helps because it helps us reduce use of chemical. These are some of the ways we can conserve water. In Santa Clara County, for example, over 55% of our water is transported. And it takes a lot of energy to move that much water to where we are so that we can turn around tap. That means any way we save money, and we are doing a good job. I mean, we've been making good progress in water conservation, but there's still always room for improvement. So these are some of the ways we could help.
Yeah. Just for the people who are in the East Bay, the street in front of Berkeley High was done over to demonstrate, it's a demo street that shows how to construct permeable materials that let the water drain through and replenish the water table rather than just run off into the drains. So if anybody has a chance to go by, and it's a really attractive looking street too. It's only one block long, but it looks very
What
nice.
street name is it on?
MLK? Is it MLK? Well, that is going the other way. It's the east-west street. Yeah, if you Google Berkeley High
Yeah.
and the front where the main office and main
Yeah.
opening is, it's an east-west street. It's only one block long. But you know what? It's between City Hall and Berkeley High, so
Yeah.
can't miss it.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, some stretches in Santa Clara County also like San Tomas Expressway. There's stretches of it where you could see they are working to reconfigure the planting area, the median, so that it's when big storm comes, the water is being channeled toward plants like deer grass is one example that's that do really well in such rain garden like that, so that they're not going straight into storm drain. Anyone know what hydrozones are? No, more or less? Okay. Basically just plants, area with plants with similar watering needs so that it makes it easier if you want to do drip irrigation. It's easier for planting. I am gonna make this pitch. If you can plan your meals so that you're not throwing out food, do it. It is amazing how much food we waste in the United States. The amount of land it takes to produce the food we throw away, it's bigger than United States, Mexico, and the most populous part of Canada. And guess what? That food go into landfill. That get turned into methane, which is even stronger greenhouse gas. So these are some of the ways all of us can help to reduce food waste. And you don't even need to plant anything. But of course, we like to plant things, right? Because we're garden here. Compost.
You know about that?
Yep. Okay. All right. Heat Island, you know that? We can skip over?
Yeah.
Okay. You probably know this too.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So basically, we talked about everything in the yellow circle. They are strategy to adapt to climate change. Some of them you can see also have ability to help mitigate because they help reduce carbon. The one thing that's central to that, which is what we're doing now, is education. We're learning together, and I hope you will take what you've learned tonight, put it into practice, but share with your friends and neighbors also, and let's learn together. Because there's more to learn all the time. One thing I want to add, when we practice ways to help reduce, adapt to climate change. Yes, it's just one of us there, individual is small, but more of us do it, multiply the effects. Sure, you all know Doug me. No? Okay. Pretty famous conservationist and author. In the last couple of years, he's come up with this idea of homegrown national park. Basically, what he's saying is, but more people turn a lawn into gardens that support beneficial insects and biodiversity. The individual private garden put together becomes a conservation corridor. And it has the potential and the impact of the size and the magnitude of a national park. So please share what you learned. That's how we can get through this together. It's late, so I'm not gonna add any more. Thank you, Mary.